There are 100 people on death row in the state of Pennsylvania. Richard Roland Laird, 34 years on death row. Following Anthony Milano's death on December 15, 1987, Richard Roland Laird and Frank Chester stood trial together in 1988 on allegations of murder and other offenses. Both men acknowledged witnessing Milano's death during the guilt phase, and each claimed the other was the murderer. Both were found guilty of every charge. Milano consented to drive Chester and Laird home. An hour or so later, the three people, still in Milano's car, drove into the township's woods, pulled over to the side of the road, and got out. Milano fell on the ground when Chester repeatedly kicked or hit him in the head. Laird killed Milano by repeatedly slashing his throat with a box cutter after jumping on top of him, pinning him to the ground. David Chmiel, 21 years on death row. On September 21, 1983, at around 9 in the morning, Mary Drake, a nurse hired to care for James Lunario, discovered that he, his brother Victor, and sister Angelina had all been murdered in the Throop, Pennsylvania home they shared. The results of the autopsy revealed that Victor had 12 stab wounds, James had 10, and Angelina had 11. Defensive wounds to the hands and or arms were also sustained by James and Angelina. Based on the autopsy's physical results, as well as the visual and verbal testimonies from witnesses, the medical examiner determined that all three victims died between Tuesday, September 20, 1983 at 11 p.m. and Wednesday, September 21, 1983 at 2 a.m. Several neighbors' contributions of information allowed for the narrowing of the time of death. On September 20th at around 11 p.m., a neighbor heard Angelina call to Victor while he was walking his dog and saw him standing at the kitchen doorway of the Lunario residence. At 11:45 p.m., Linda, another neighbor, heard her dog howling and looked out her window to see a powder blue car with a gleaming grille and hood ornament parked next to her own vehicle. When he got home on September 21st between 2:15 and 2:30 a.m., her spouse also noticed this car. According to both witnesses, the car had left by 8 a.m. Later, Linda recognized the car in a picture as the one she had seen in front of her house. She also recognized the car at a state police garage as the vehicle she had seen the evening of the killings. Chmiel owned the car in the picture and the one in the garage. Stephen Rex Edmiston, 34 years on death row. On October 5th, in the early hours of the morning, 2-year-old Bobby Jo Matthew was taken from her bed. State police questioned Edmiston, a previous boyfriend of the child's grandmother and a friend of the child's parents, in relation to her disappearance. He prepared a map for the police that showed the location of the body, marked with an X. The child was essayed by Edmiston, who also scalped her and broke her skull. She also had burns on her face and chest, as well as a puncture wound in her chest. According to the prosecution, she attempted to crawl under Edmiston's car to get away from the assay, but the hot catalytic converter of the car burned and injured her. This is how the puncture and burns occurred. Robert Hughes, 34 years on death row. After killing restaurant manager Gene Rader, 41 years old, and employee Charles Haggerty, 46 years old, in an execution-style manner, Hughes was charged with 2 counts of first-degree homicide, 2 counts of criminal homicide, and other connected felonies. In the Westchester restaurant, both victims were shot in the head at close range, according to Chester County District Attorney James McAllery. Anthony Reed, 33 years on death row. On July 9, 1988, Mark Lisby stole from his uncle Terence Lisby about $500 worth of crack cocaine capsules, or caps. The following day, the victim told Lisby that he had used the caps but lacked the funds to reimburse him. Lisby was employed by Lawrence Boston, a crack cocaine dealer, and both of these people were trying to join the Junior Black Mafia, or JBM, a criminal organization with its headquarters in Philadelphia. Lisby and Boston, respectively, worked for Kevin Bauman, a member of JBM. The victim met with Bauman to explain the problem and offered to make up the lost money the next week once he realized that Bauman would be concerned about the pills being missing. 2 days later, Boston showed up at the victim's Philadelphia home because he had not been paid by Lisby for the narcotics. Anthony Reed, one of the JBM members, joined Boston. Reed, Boston, and the victim had a brief talk before leaving the residence and heading west on Cumberland Street. Reed pulled out a gun as the men got closer to the intersection of Cumberland Street and 31st Street. He shot the victim 3 times, once in the back of his right knee, once in the center of his chest, and once in his upper right chest under the collarbone. On March 13, 1989, just after 3 in the morning, police responded to a shooting at the public housing complex known as Richard Allen Homes. They discovered the bodies of Neil Wilkinson, 18 years old, who had been shot to death, and Daryl Woods, 20 years old, who was still alive but had sustained 6 gunshot wounds to his left knee, left arm, stomach, and hip. On April 10, 1989, authorities detained Reed, and on June 27, they detained Bauman. Reed was on bond at the time of his arrest, awaiting trial on the murder charge related to Mark Lisby's killing. After that, on May 11, 1989, he was taken into custody and accused of killing Michael Waters, a 16-year-old, on March 7, 1989. Sheldon Hannibal, 29 years on death row. After a disagreement with the victim, Peter LaCourte, regarding the legitimacy of a gold necklace, Hannibal Sheldon and co-defendant Larry Gregory grabbed the chain and pistol-whipped LaCourte. Hannibal threatened to shoot LaCourte, so he stopped trying to run away. After dropping to his knees and placing his hands behind his head, LaCourte was shot 6 times by Hannibal, resulting in his death. Tanisha Robinson, then 15 years old, heard gunshots as she was fleeing the site of the robbery and beating, and she later provided a statement to the police. She provided testimony throughout their initial hearings as well, but on August 4, 1993, she and 2 of her female companions were killed in an execution-style manner in an apartment in the same housing development where LaCourte was killed, by close-range bullets to the head. Hannibal asked his friends to get rid of Robinson so that she would not testify in his trial. Harvey Robinson, 29 years on death row. He is regarded as one of the history's youngest serial killers. In addition, he is the first serial killer in Allentown, Pennsylvania history. Robinson was arrested when he was just 19 years old. His first victim was a 29-year-old nurse assistant named Joan Burgard. In August 1992, she was bludgeoned and essayed at her East Allentown home. Robinson kidnapped, essayed, and stabbed 15-year-old Charlotte Schmoyer, a newspaper girl, in June 1993. When she saw no sign of the girl, one of Charlotte's frequent newspaper customers observed Charlotte's cart outside her front window and called the morning call offices. When Charlotte's managers were unable to find her either, they called the police. Charlotte's body was discovered nearby in a densely forested region the same afternoon. She had suffered more than 20 stab wounds and she was essayed. Jessica Jean Fortney, a 47-year-old grandmother, was essayed and strangled by Robinson the following month. Denise Sam Kelly, his 4th victim, was battered and essayed but managed to escape alive. Robinson went back to Denise's residence where he was shot at by a policeman who was standing by. Robinson was apprehended after being located and traced to a nearby hospital. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.